Okay, so let me also welcome you to the first CEO at Smith speaker this semester. I mean, we've been doing this program now for 3 years. I think this is our 4th year, and it gives me a particular pleasure to actually welcome David Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Deloitte Financial Advisory Services, LLP, to be our opening act. The one thing you may or may not know is that the Smith School of Business has had a long and very close relationship with Deloitte. I mean, we, on a regular basis, we place our students in Deloitte, both the MBA students as well as undergraduates. But we've also had a long relationship in terms of, some of our advisory board members are alumni, who have been alumni of Deloitte as well as alumni of the Smith School. And we have a very, very good partnership that we've had over many, many years. So I want to, at the risk of not including everybody here, I want to also acknowledge David Piper, who's sitting up front, who one of our alums, well known at Deloitte as well, and has been on our advisory board for many years, and we are very happy to have this kind of close relationship. In fact, my career services team tells me that on a regular basis, Deloitte is like one of the most preferred, if not the most preferred, company for our students to join. Okay, now I should introduce a speaker. So David Williams has, by the way, I also have a particular pleasure to have David Williams here because he was at Penn for many years. And for those of you who know me, I was at Penn as a professor for many years. So, of course, I didn't teach him, luckily. Okay, David Williams has more than 25 years of experience providing advice and counsel to clients engaged in business transactions or facing critical business events. During his tenure with Deloitte, he has served in various leadership roles, spanning Deloitte's financial advisory services, 2 major business arms, the forensic and dispute services, as well as advisory services. Most recently, he was the national leader of the advisory services practice, and earlier he was a national leader of the valuation services practice, and a principal in the organization's forensic and dispute services practice. Since 2004, he has been a member of the executive committee of Deloitte FAS, and on the boards of both Deloitte FAS and Deloitte LLP. I mean, amazing career. As I said, he earned his undergraduate degree in economics from the University of Pennsylvania and a master's degree in business administration from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a member of the American Bar Association and serves on the regional advisory board of Teach for America, New York, as well as the Pro Bono Institute board. Without further ado, I'd like you to all join me in welcoming David Williams.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Good, because I can hear myself. I just wanted to make sure you guys could as well. I'm overwhelmed. Well, first, I'm very pleased to be here. I don't want to start my presentation without saying that. But I would like to say that I'm very overwhelmed by the fact that we have people, in fact, sitting on the floor here to see me. And there are several people around the room who I have the pleasure of working with every day who are even more shocked that there's anybody willing to sit on the floor to spend any time listening to anything that I have to say. The last time, in fact, people sat on the floor and had anything to do with me was the protest that happened when I became the CEO of the FAS business. So I would say to you that this is largely overwhelming for me, all kidding aside. I'm really pleased to be here with you today to share some thoughts. I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A, which is my understanding of the tradition here. I want you guys to get as much benefit from whatever knowledge I bring as you possibly can. But I do have a few prepared remarks. And they deal with perspective and success. And as I said, I'll try to leave as much time as I can for Q&A. So I'm a big believer, as many of my team here will tell you, in cutting to the chase. So let me cut to the chase. The thing that has been responsible for most, if not all, of any success that I've had in my career has been this notion of having the right perspective on client problems and helping clients figure them out. It's just that simple. It's understanding the facts, but also arraying those facts into a framework, a point of view, so that I could consult with a point of view with my clients and ultimately help them solve whatever business problem they have. Now, I'm smart enough to know that I can't handle any business problem, but the power of Deloitte, all 56,000 of us, can handle just about any problem that any business comes up with, be it on the trust and confidence side, that's our audit and tax business, or on the adding value side, that's our consulting and FAS businesses. So this thing about perspective isn't just my perspective, isn't just my way of looking at a problem and how I perceive it, but also the group's perspective. And the first thing I learned very early on in my career was that everybody's perspective is different. That's a good thing when you consult, because if you put a group of people together, give them the same problem, the same set of facts, and they consult on that problem from different perspectives, the client automatically gets a better answer. I'm fond of a quote that I use, and I'm going to read it to you. Life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. That quote's powerful to me because what it says is that you look at something and what you get back is like when you look in a mirror. You look at your perspective. You've got to make sure you get everybody else's perspective. So what I'm going to try to do in this talk is to give you some perspectives that are different than my own. I'm going to try to put myself in your shoes and give you some things that have been successful for me, but in the context of how I think you might look at them versus how I might look at them. I'm going to tell you some things that worked for me in the context of my career, and trust me, I'm going to tell you some things that really, 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 really didn't work for me in the context of my career, and probably would not have worked for anybody in the context of their career now that I go back and think about them. Here's an example. I was well on my way to having a great career, a great life, and I was kicked out of school. And I thought, all right, so here's my great career, my great life, everything I'm going to be doing completely derailed because I've been kicked out of school. Well, Deloitte doesn't hire dropouts, so obviously I got back in school. And the thing I didn't tell you was I was kicked out of nursery school. And so the story very simply is, and I'm going to tell this in as nice a way as I possibly can. Some of you will recognize some of the references I'm about to give you. If you do, put your hand up and just let me know that you've experienced what I'm about to tell you. So I went to nursery school at a church nursery school. And I was assigned a chore consistent with being in a church nursery school. And that was to help the woman in the kitchen, who I will euphemistically call the church lady. Show of hands, how many of you know what a church lady is? You got this? You get it? Okay, good. I won't say that the church lady was unattractive. I'm not going to say that. I will say that she had a mustache. Show of hands, how many? No, we won't do that. So one of my chores was to help her in the kitchen. And the day in question, she was making spinach. So she goes up into the cabinet and she pulls out this literally industrial strength can. I mean, it was this big around of spinach. She pours it into a big pot. She boils it for what, to me, you know, a 3- or 4-year-old kid, seemed like an hour, right? And she takes a big ladle and starts ladling out this green stuff plus the green water that was boiled through, and put it on everybody's plate. I thought, okay, great. I'm doing my chores, I'll help. Then she put some on my plate. And I refused to eat it. So you can say that the church lady and I had a different perspective. My perspective was there was no way I was eating that stuff. Her perspective was there was no way I was getting up until I ate it. We had a standoff and I was suspended. So, you know, I'm from Baltimore, so this is right out of the wire. I thought that my career was going downhill pretty quickly. So my mother came back after a couple days and cut a deal, literally. She acted as my lawyer, and she cut a deal, which was I wouldn't voice my displeasure about spinach. I wouldn't be as flippant as I was accused of being, and they would let me back in nursery school. So again, as I started, it depends on your perspective. She saw something. I saw something very differently. So again, I'm trying to sort of help with the notion of perspective. Here's another thing that really, really, really didn't work in the context of my career. I would not suggest anybody do this. As Dean Anand said, I went to the University of Pennsylvania as an undergraduate and the Wharton School as a graduate. And during my Wharton days, I started to feel really empowered by the knowledge and by the education that I was getting at Wharton. So empowered that I really thought I was invincible. Literally. I thought it didn't matter what the problem was that got put in front of me, I thought I could handle it. So I'm in a presentation, and one of the speakers at the presentation made an error. Now, Dave Piper will remember this because we were at the same firm at the time. We were, in fact, partners at the time. And the error was, I wouldn't say life-threatening. It was just sloppy. It was not complicated. It was not complex. It was just sloppy. I wouldn't call it an arithmetic error, but it was just sloppy. It was something that the speaker should not have done. So I felt it appropriate in a room plus or minus about this size to put my hand up, sitting in the back as sort of a brand new partner, and say, you know, there's a mistake on that slide. X should be Y, yada, 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 yada. I don't know if it changes your conclusion or not, but I just thought it would be appropriate to bring that up. Again, I thought my career was over because the person that I elected to correct was the CEO of Deloitte. Jim Shiro was his name. We again had a different perspective on the issue. I thought I was doing something for the greater good and thought I was helping the situation. He was wondering whether he had made a mistake by hiring me, by making me a partner, by any of the things that had happened up to that point. And he still, to this day, Jim's retired and a good friend and has been a good mentor to me in my career, but he still, to this day, points out that day when he walks up and very lovingly slaps me in the back of my head. So fast forward to today, I'm occasionally eating spinach. I'm not correcting people in public as much as I used to. I'm at least picking my spots a little better. But I am the CEO of something called Deloitte Financial Advisory Services, which essentially is a business that helps clients solve unique business problems related to the transactions that they do and the processes that they go through that create controversy or crisis in their business. It's just that simple, and we array a bunch of people of different skill sets, of different backgrounds, of different perspectives on those client problems. So our notion very simply is, in order to do that, we need to give people a basic grounding in skill sets that we think are important to let them consult with a point of view. And there are 4 or 5 of them that we've been talking about in the practice for the past couple years. Things that are not only going to help us consult with a point of view and serve our clients better, but ultimately are going to help our business. We call them in our business the 5 things. I've changed them a little bit because I think they're particularly and equally relevant for you. And I'm going to take you through the 5 things right now, but I want to just explain them to you right now and give you a chance to think about them for a second. The 5 things as we define them are as follows. First, relationships. Second, creating and sustaining, in our case, the Deloitte FAS brand, but in your case, your brand. Third, knowing the customer. Fourth, consistently offering solutions. And fifth, operating with discipline. The 5 things happened simply because I sat in my office one day as we were putting together our plan for now. We're now in fiscal year 13, which is hard for me to believe, 2013. When I put together our fiscal year 11 operating plan, I always try to take the operating statistics, the operating key indicators that we want to get to as a business, and translate them into very simple, very understandable actions that we would like people in the practice to take. And I was struggling doing that with regard to that year because it was a transition year for us. We had come out of a recession. We were growing by leaps and bounds. There were lots of different choices that we had to make than we had made previously. We had lots of new people. We had some significant turnover during the downturn, and we were building back up. We had lots of new partners who were sort of nervous about where they would fit and what they would ultimately do in our business. So it was a transition year in many respects. So I had up on my whiteboard in my office all of these just thoughts about what would be important and what would accelerate our progress. Talk again about perspective. One of my partners by the name of Kathy Banco. Has anybody ever heard of Kathy? Kathy's reasonably famous. She went to an inferior business school called Harvard. Clearly inferior to Wharton, and even more clearly inferior to Smith. But that's another discussion. But she came into my office and she said, and Kathy and I are friends, we've been friends for a long time. I admire her brain power. She's written a book called The Corporate Lattice. If you ever get a chance to read it, you should read it. It's about the way careers progress in organizations like ours. I think it's a very interesting book. She came into my office, as she typically does, and she said, "Hey, David, what you doing?" And that's sort of how we talk to each other, like brothers and sisters typically talk to each other. And I said, "Kathy, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to communicate all this stuff. It's all over the place, Post-its, whiteboard, paper, stuff taped up against the wall." And she looked at it for a minute. She sort of surveyed it and just started grabbing pieces of paper and stuff and moving it around and took different color pens. And she came up with those 5 things that I just gave you. That's a perspective. That's taking facts and arraying them into a point of view that helps you move forward. I want to talk about a couple of the 5 things right now, if I could. I'd like to spend my time on 3 of them. First, building relationships. Second, creating and sustaining your brand. And third, operating with discipline. So let's talk about relationship building. I just had the pleasure of doing a fireside chat with some of the folks in the room. Really enjoyed that. We spent a lot of time talking about relationship building. It is, for me, the single most important process that we as knowledge workers go through in the context of being successful in the workplace. It is also, at least for me, the single most universally ignored set of skills that I needed to build as an individual. I had no clue about what building relationships meant, sustaining relationships meant, even though I had seen examples of it all through my career and had benefited from it all through my life. Let me give you an example. The first relationship I ever built, and I think this is a fair statement, is with a guy by the name of William Green. Bill Green is what we used to call him. He was a teacher at my high school. He, for some unknown reason, saw something in me that I didn't see and decided that he was going to spend some time mentoring me. He was a relationship king. He knew everybody in Baltimore, where I grew up. Anybody got into a problem, anybody had an issue, anything that needed to be done in the context of helping my classmates, people who he cared about, his family, his extended family, he had the ability to influence through relationships that he had. A couple of examples. He is the person singularly responsible for me getting into the University of Pennsylvania as an undergrad. My sister, who was a University of Pennsylvania student, she was a master's student at the time, said, David, you really ought to think about coming to Penn. I'm probably a junior at the time. And I said, I think I want to go to Maryland. Literally, I said that. And she said, I think you ought to come to Penn. Now, my brother, who was a student at the University of Maryland, said, no, you got it right. You really want to come to Maryland. And there was this tug of war that went. She said, well, David, just let me take a look at your grades. Because my sister, she's away. She's a master's student. She's older than me. She's 15 years older than me. She looks at my grades and she goes, ooh, I'm not so sure you can get into Penn with those grades. So at that point, it became a challenge, and I decided I wanted to go. So I brought this up to Mr. Green, who literally made 2 phone calls, and I had an interview with somebody at Penn and said, don't worry about it, you'll get in. That was his relationship. And he had no reason to do that for me other than he decided that he saw something in me that was helpful. So fast forward 3 years later, I'm looking for an internship. I talked to Mr. Green, and he says, got something for you. He introduces me to a woman. Her name was Sally Michael, another relationship guru. Relationships all around Baltimore City, but those are a little bit more powerful than Mr. Green. You name anybody who was a power broker in Baltimore in the early, mid-'80s, early '90s, Sally Michael knew him. All the politicians, all of the athletes, all of the educators, anybody who was particularly relevant to the scene in Baltimore, Maryland at that point in time, Sally had on her Rolodex. And when I say Rolodex, I don't mean PDA, I don't mean iPhone, I mean Rolodex. I mean technology was a rotary Rolodex, not a flip Rolodex. Anyway, so obviously Bill Green and Sally Michael knew each other. And he called Sally and said, do you have anything for David? And Sally said, yeah. Next thing you know, I'm a mayor's intern. I'm one of 18 people who sit, every Friday around the table, the cabinet table with the mayor, and who the mayor gives advice and counsel to. And I'm working in a city agency, which at that time was the Economic Development Agency of the city of Baltimore. An amazing experience for me. I got to see stuff and do stuff that I never would have had an opportunity to do, again, because of relationships. He was also somebody, because of our relationship, that I could have the difficult conversation with. The internship was unpaid. So I said, look here, Mr. Green, I'm really enjoying this internship, but I need some money. So he put me to work. He ran an Upward Bound program. Is everybody here familiar with Upward Bound? He ran an Upward Bound program at Gilman and put me to work as a tutor, which also cemented my love for education, another thing I'll talk to you about in a second. So long-winded way of saying that this set of relationships emanating from this one guy is largely the reason why I end up where I am today. So that's one example of why relationships are important. But at that point, I'm not sure I still got it. I should have understood it, but I didn't understand it. Fast forward to my first day at Price Waterhouse, which is where I started before I worked at Deloitte. I'm sitting in what we euphemistically called, and Dave Piper will know this, audit entry. What's audit entry? It's 3 weeks of sanctioned torture. Learning what a work paper looks like, learning how to use a corner punch to punch a hole in the top left corner of the work paper, learning how to use a spike to put it through to hold the work papers together, learning what a blue pen was for, learning what a blue pencil, excuse me, ooh, not a blue pen, ooh, learning what a blue pencil was for, learning what a red pencil was for, learning how to 10 key. You know what a 10 key is, anybody? A 10 key is an old adding machine with a tape attached to it, not a calculator, not a computer, no such things. A 10 key, learning how to 10 key with your left hand and write with your right hand. So 3 weeks of, Dave, am I lying? 3 weeks of sanctioned torture, okay? So I am in audit entry, and I'm sitting next to 4 or 5 guys. And they're going through the same pain I'm going through, and we're bonding. Fast forward 10 years from there, one of them is the CFO of United Technologies Corporation. One of them is a high-ranking financial official at Textron. One of them is the CEO of US Steel. These are the people that I'm sitting next to in entry and other training classes. Yet I had no clue that these people were ultimately relationships that I should have been working. That group of people and other people who I've sat next to are folks that generate most of the relationships I had that lead to business in our business. So you never know who you're sitting next to. The example I used in the fireside chat is somebody sat next to Oprah Winfrey in the 8th grade. Somebody did. Imagine if that person had used that relationship to their advantage. Last story about relationships, and I'll move on. This is a very, very recent one. About 3 months ago, I'm flying from New York to Dallas. Guy gets on the plane, about my size, more or less, sits next to me. I don't know who he is, but he looks familiar. I'm tired. I've been traveling all week. All I really wanted to do, quite frankly, and everybody here is of age, I wanted to have an adult beverage and take a nap. Okay? It's all I really wanted to do. So we get to Dallas. I grab my coat. He grabs his coat. He leaves. I leave. I get to where I'm going, and I'll talk about where I was going in a second. It's a place called Deloitte University. I'll tell you about that in a second. But anyway, I get there, and my boss, our global CEO, Barry Salzberg, says to me, "Hey, David, how you doing? What's wrong with that jacket? Doesn't look like it fits you very well." Turns out, he had my jacket, and I had his. Okay? Now remember, I hadn't said anything to this guy because I really didn't want to spend any time talking to him because all I wanted was the adult beverage and a little bit of relaxation. So I look at the blazer, and it's got his name embroidered inside. It says Thomas Horton. Does anybody know who Tom Horton is? CEO of? No, close. CEO of American Airlines. It gets worse. American is one of our biggest clients. So Williams is sitting next to the CEO of one of our biggest clients and doesn't have the common sense to continue to build a relationship that already exists. First of all, I should have recognized the guy. The guy's responsible for a whole bunch of revenue for us this year. There must be 100 of my people working on an American Airlines engagement right now. I had no clue of who he was, spent no time building relationship, but I had his jacket. So I was able to bootstrap a big mistake into an opportunity, and Tom and I have since spent some time together and laughed about the fact that we exchanged each other's jacket. He said, "Man, you look really tired that day." I said, "I was." He said, "I spent the whole day in bankruptcy court trying to get some contracts approved." I said, "You were probably more tired than I am." I should have, thought about it. So back to the basic point. You have to be deliberate about relationship building. You have to make it a core competency. And it's one of those things where you don't know when it's going to pay off, but trust me, it's going to pay off. So relationship building in a nutshell. Let me talk about the second one of the 5 things that I wanted to talk about, and that is operating with discipline. And the way we think about operating with discipline is there are lots of different choices we can make as a business, but the choices we have to make are the ones that are in the best interest of the business and in the best interest of our clients and in the best interest of our partners, all rolled up into one discussion. What does that mean? That means there's going to be conflict. That means that there's not going to be a perfect decision every time because you're not going to have perfect facts, because even if you have perfect facts, sometimes the decisions are going to be mutually exclusive. What's best for the client isn't going to be best for the firm, isn't going to be best for the partners. What's best for the partners might not be best for the firm. It happens all the time. And then you bring this little called, as I said to you before, the 56,000 people that work for us. That becomes a different part of the conversation, all of which we need to kick around. So we define operating with discipline that way. I would define it for you as very simply making good choices. Don't necessarily be concerned, overly concerned with the destination. Be much more concerned about the experiences and the choices that you get on the journey, along the way. They are much more important, they are much more valuable to you, and ultimately will turn into capital for you to use as you make different choices in your career. The idea that when I was sitting in your seat, knew exactly what I was going to do is laughable. I went to Penn as an engineering student, knew after about 3 days that engineering wasn't for me. It took me 3 semesters to have the guts to get out of it. When I got to Deloitte, the 3 weeks of sanctioned torture known as audit entry, I sort of knew I didn't want to be an auditor. Yet, I did that for another 1.5 years before I concluded, this really isn't for me. So, and there's been lots of other choices in my life where I've, not known the path. And I think it's pretty normal to not know the path. I also think it's pretty normal for people to try to rationalize after the fact what their path should be, or to believe that there ought to be some natural opening of the clouds, playing of harps, sunlight shining that will say, okay, I've now found the way. There is no way. Well, at least I can only speak from my experience. Nobody can tell me there is a way because I've been looking for a way for as long as I've been living, and there isn't one. The paradigm I use is pretty straightforward. Think about a Venn diagram with 3 circles. One circle is your ability, one circle is your passion, and one circle is how much you get paid. You got to be mercenary about it. The right spot for you is the perfect intersection of that Venn diagram. If at any point in time you're not at that intersection, you need to be thinking about doing something different. You've got to be that mercenary about it and that willing to change, that willing to take on opportunities. Last point before we move on to some Q&A is creating and sustaining your brand. Consulting, well, let's not even talk about consulting. Let's talk about the Big 8. Used to be the Big 8, used to be the Big 6, used to be the Big 5, now the Big 4. We often joke inside of this industry that it's the worst run oligopoly you've ever seen. But it is an oligopoly. And for those of you who are economics students, you know that there are some tried and true business ways, some things you do when you run an oligopoly. You have to distinguish your brand. You have to get people to believe that the product you sell, even though it's very similar to the product that the next guy sells and that the next girl sells, is distinctive. So we spend a great deal of time in Deloitte FAS. We face the same sort of competition in our markets. We spend a great deal of time trying to get people to distinguish our brand through adding skills, through becoming eminent, that is known to our clients for something. We like to use the term famous for something. And through letting people know that through writing, publishing, all sorts of other things that we do. We think that's important. We think that helps distinguish the brand. The exact same thing is true for each and every one of you. You have to find some way to distinguish who you are and what you do from every other who you are and what you do that's out there. I'll give you a couple ways to think about it and things that have worked for me, my perspective on it. the first thing I tried to do was make sure that I was the best at my craft that I could possibly be. Lots of people in the room who work with me every day will tell you that that is an ongoing project. Some days I get it right. Dave Piper works in our quality organization, which means he reviews work product that goes out the door, including mine. Some days he will tell you that I don't get it right. But in any event, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make yourself famous among the clients who would hire you for what you do every day. Perfect your craft. Second, be able to translate your craft into something that clients understand and can relate to. That's about communication. One of the most underrated skills that exist in business today. I know people who are literally descendants of the most intelligent human beings you can ever think of. I'm not going to use a name, because if I use a name, you'll be able to identify who the person is and who the descendant is. But rocket scientists, brilliant people who can't communicate their brilliance to clients in a way that clients understand, identify, and can resonate with. What good is having a perspective if you can't communicate it, if nobody sees it, if ultimately it doesn't contribute to solving client problems or adding value in the way you hope that it would? So those three things in a nutshell: relationship building, operating discipline, and building your brand, to me, are things that we do every day from our perspective in Deloitte FAS, and that we think help us get to our objectives. But I also think from your perspective, they're things that will help you do the same thing. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I would ask you please not to disclose any of the things that we've talked about today. I would ask you not to go find the church lady. That could be problematic for me. There's several other things that I've said. I hope that what happens at Smith stays at Smith. And I'm happy right now to take any questions you might have on just about anything. Remember, your professor and your deans are here, so I would generally make those questions about business, although I'm willing to answer just about anything. Dave. Can I tell you about Deloitte University? I can tell you about Deloitte University. So we got into a debate, Deloitte got into a debate at the leadership levels of the firm about 5 years ago about the level of our spend on training and education. And we had some zealots in the room who said, you know, if we just took this in-house and built it ourselves, it would be cheaper. And that conversation got some momentum behind it. Remember, we are a firm of accountants. So that conversation did get some momentum behind it. But it didn't really mushroom or go viral until we thought about the impact that doing such a thing could have on our culture. We hearkened back to other examples that we saw of companies that had built their own leadership development, training and education competencies, including physical facilities, and went around and looked at what benefits they got. And uniformly, they got cost benefits, some more than others. But what the really successful ones got was a common culture, shared values, the ability to give people, to teach people the Deloitte way, if I can use that term. So we engaged in a debate within the firm, euphemistically called bricks versus clicks, because the click idea was education was moving away from bricks and mortar and was moving toward technology and electronic education. So why would we build and I have a partner who used these exact words, why would we build a mausoleum when technology was going to get way ahead of us? Short answer is our CEO at the time, a gentleman by the name of Barry Salzberg, had the courage and had the willpower and had the drive to make it happen. And we built something in Westlake, Texas called Deloitte University. It is our leadership and development center, 800 sleeping rooms, close to 150 classrooms, to use a technical term, tricked out as no other classrooms could potentially be tricked out. It's unimaginable the amount of technology we have in this place. All of it of value, all of it designed to help people through leadership, training, and education build culture and a common set of values and culture in our organization. It's a wonderful facility. Lots of people in the room who are with Deloitte have been. It's about a year old today. We are getting rave reviews on it. I tell you, I get to see it, as a leader in the firm, I get to see the complaints. You know, we're an accounting firm. We only look at the complaints. We don't look at the thousands of people who give us compliments. We look at the handful who complain. They complain about things, for example, like there's too much food. The beds are a little too long, so when I wake up in the morning a little drowsy, I hit my ankle on the side of the bed. And when you start seeing complaints like that, you know you've hit a home run. And it's just been a tremendous investment for us, Dave. Thanks for reminding me. I meant to discuss that in the context of relationship building, because what Deloitte University allows people to do in context is build internal relationships and internal synergy. Almost as important, I would argue, some people would argue more important, and I would tend to agree with it. More important than everybody deciding that they need to go away and build an external relationship, because there's some duplication in that. Somebody in the firm might already have that relationship. And if you can harness that power, it's significant. So what we've tried to do is use Deloitte University to bring our people who operate in different tribes, different businesses, different industries, different skill sets together under a common purpose, hopefully to build relationships with each other and multiply and expand the value of the business. Dave, thanks for that. Yes?
What would be your advice to an undergraduate like freshman or sophomore who wants to get involved possibly in a company like Deloitte, which he or she started doing?
I would say you should attend the sessions that firms like ours in particular, have here at Smith, and get to learn a lot about the organization. If you get an opportunity, come try us out for a summer. Now, there's a couple things that'll happen if you try us out for a summer. We'll try to never let you leave. You have to understand that. That's sort of the quid pro quo. If you come show up at our place and you have a good experience and we have a good experience, have any of you ever been on a vacation and somebody convinces you that you can get a free meal if you go listen to a timeshare pitch? And about halfway through, you figure out the free meal wasn't worth it because the person is not letting you go. Well, we're not that bad, but we will do everything in our power if we see somebody who we think fits our organization to keep you. But that's what I think you do more than anything else. Connect, and in terms of being broad about this, connect with a lot of organizations where you think you might have an opportunity or might be interested. Spend the time. That's what they're here for. Lots of hands. I think I need to do this democratically. So I'm going to start here with my former partner who will complain vehemently if I don't start with him first.
One thing I would add to your list of important things is do what you say you're going to do.
Absolutely right. Being famous for something isn't great if you are the big brain who doesn't deliver. It's vision and ability to deliver, and part of delivering is just being disciplined about delivery, is just doing what you say you are going to do. I can't tell you the number of times where I got a consultation with somebody across the firm, and they asked me for a date, and the date was tomorrow, and it would have been perfectly fine if I let it slip till the next day. But I said to them, it's tomorrow, so I'm going to spend the time and try to get them the answer. People remember that. Your point's very, very, very well taken. People do remember that. Become somebody who is known for meeting deadlines, meeting promises, delivering when you said you were going to deliver. And also recognizing that the great thing about human beings is that they're human beings, and that 2 words, 3 words actually, please and I apologize, go a long way. So if you miss a deadline, I'm sorry. If you get something wrong, I probably should have got that right, I apologize. That goes a long way, especially in an organization like ours. In a good culture, your ability to say those things is very important. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with all things about building relationships, but how do you balance between, building relationships for the sake of having a bunch of relationships and making those really meaningful and adding value for you and the person that you build it with?
So every relationship you build is not going to be meaningful. Let me ask a personal question. How many friends do you have on Facebook?
Too many people I probably don't really talk to very often.
But that's what Facebook's designed for. So, I mean, the notion there is, think about a bullseye. If you guys have heard this already, then shut me up. But think about a bullseye. In the middle of the bullseye is a little circle. Think about that as the friends you see every day, you work with every day. You don't need Facebook for them, right? You see them every day. You want to know what they're doing. There's lots of other ways for you to figure it out, like talk to them. Right? What you need Facebook for are the people who are on the periphery, right? Your relationships will work exactly the same way. There will be a group of people where there's a constant connection and a constant value equation, where they think they're getting value and you think you're giving value. And they'll stay in that inside circle. There'll be other people who recognize that the value will be sometimes itinerant, sometimes you'll get more, sometimes they'll get more. But that's okay. I think when you build a relationship, it's sort of unwritten that people understand that this isn't like going to the prom or dating, that it isn't, I got to call you and say, what you doing, all the time. And I'm being a little facetious, but just to make the point. The point is that people get it, right? So I have clients that I did work for 15 years ago. I call them, we spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about what's happened over the last 15 years, and it's like we've been talking every day for the past 15 years. It doesn't seem like it would work that way, but it really does. I'm trying to get out of the middle. There's a gentleman who actually, a part of the protest, who's sitting there, so love to hear what you have to say.
Hi. What would you say was the best opportunity that you took while you were an undergraduate?
The best, I'm sorry?
Opportunity.
The best opportunity that I took while I was an undergraduate. You mean academically? In general. I'm going to answer this question truthfully. I'm not going to sort of give you the standard, it's an academic answer. I went to school in the early 80s in Philadelphia. The best opportunity that I took was to go with 10 or 15 people to Salt Lake City to watch the University of Pennsylvania play in the Final Four in 1979. That's the best opportunity I took. And by the way, do you guys know who was in that Final Four, you basketball fans? Does anybody know? A couple unknown basketball players. There was a freshman at Michigan State University by the name of Magic Johnson. And there was a 3-time kick out of college. He went to Indiana for about a semester and didn't do very well. Went someplace else for about a semester and didn't do very well. And ended up at Indiana State, and his name was Larry Bird. So that's why, I mean, if it had been anybody besides Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, I probably would have come up with something else. But honestly, that was the best thing I did. That was the best opportunity that I took. Yes?
What would you
If you're able to demonstrate a distinctive level of intelligence that is above the typical group that we would expect to see, which is rare, I would argue almost impossible if we do our recruiting job correctly. But if you're able to communicate, communication really makes you stand out. I keep saying Dave, but Dave and I go back a ways. We would sit watching audit entry when other people went through the organized torture, and we would be able to pick out after about a week the people who were going to be really stars in the firm and the people who weren't, just by watching them in that context. And I think internships work exactly the same way, and in my mind, it's all about your ability to synthesize and communicate. Yes?
You said that your firm is an accounting firm. What would a different major, a person taking major in a different major other than accounting benefit by joining the firm?
So I said that a little bit facetiously. When I say I'm an accounting firm, we're an accounting firm, I mean that there is a predominant part of our culture which is an accounting firm. But we're really not an accounting firm. We're really a professional services firm. Much more of our revenue comes from non-accounting related services than come from accounting services in our firm. We hire a broad variety of different skill sets. Engineers, people who are majors in technology, just to name a couple. If you think about it, I can't think of too many folks that we don't hire, including a bunch of folks with liberal arts backgrounds. So, and we don't hire those people, obviously, to do accounting. So it's a really important thing to us, as I talked to you before about perspective, to get different points of view in the firm and deployed around client projects. And that's what we try to do. So we've got another on the floor here. So I'm giving the people who sat in on the protest first dibs.
Thank you. So my question is for the students who are going to graduate but don't really have much experience in real business world. What's your advice for them? Like how they convert the knowledge they gain in school to the real business? What would your advice like? What's the best thing they can do to have a better career development in the future?
So don't assume that when you get to a firm like ours, we're going to accept, I'm trying to say this gingerly because I've got the dean and other educators in the room, that we're going to accept that you know what you say you know. Or what your degree would suggest that you know. Said differently, we often spend a bunch of time unlearning people of stuff they learned and reteaching them stuff that's going to help them. So don't feel like you're disadvantaged because you haven't had a chance to apply. It's always better to collect more experiences, right? That's the other thing that consultants do that's really important. We collect experiences. Experiences are our capital. And it's always better to have more rather than less. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to sort of break you of habits that don't suit us particularly well and try to build into you things that we think work for us. So don't feel like you have to. I think that's probably the best way. The best way in my mind is to spend the time trying to find a firm that's going to give you as much development opportunity at your level as you possibly can, and take advantage of that. So this gentleman here has been very patient.
First, I'm very appreciative you give us a very inspiring speech. And I am Frank Gu. I am first year Smith MBA student. And I'm very glad to see you several years ago in the same shoe with us. And suppose now you have a chance to go back to school at Smith and
So my thoughts, I struggle with the right answer to that question because I'm not sure there is one. I think the solution is unique to the person, right? I think what matters, though, is a constant quest for, as I said in my speech, perspective and gaining perspective from all the places you can get it. I spent most of my early career and was fortunate enough to spend a lot of my early career working with a bunch of really smart people who approached client issues, problems, even life, very differently than I did. And I learned a lot from just observing those folks. I'll tell you what else is important. Process is important. Despite the fact that it's the oldest profession, you guys know when consulting started. There was a guy who needed to break, there was a caveman who needed to break a rock, and some other caveman said, "I'll do it for you for 50 bucks." That's when consulting started. So the business is old. The processes are, I think, pretty well known and pretty identified. So spending some time learning and understanding the processes that govern what we as consultants do every day is also very helpful, but you can't be rote about them. You can't do them as if I do exactly what the program says, I'll be fine. Quite the contrary. You have to sort of make that jump away from process and towards adding your own specific value. So I think it's going to be it's a bad answer, but I think it's going to be very different for everybody. So we've got a couple of people in the room who I think could probably answer that question better than me. Anthony, why don't you take a minute, if you would, and just, I mean, you're living it right now. What's working for you and what isn't?
I think that process is a very important thing, and I think building relationships is huge, as you talked about. But one of the things, especially being directly out of school, is that you have to come in with an idea that you have learned a lot, but you have a lot more to learn, right? And one of the things David talked about was working with really smart people, and I work with brilliant people every day. And so it's about being kind of a sponge, I try to say, and soaking up that knowledge, because the people around you, not only your clients, but the people you work with, are going to ending up teaching you a lot. And those are things that you might not apply right away, but 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, may start to show up. It's amazing how I talk to people and that are, the partner on my project, and they talk a little bit about something that they learned 10 years ago that they're just using now. So being a sponge, soaking up what people are talking about, are just things that I've really seen in the short time that I've, been at Deloitte.
Thanks for that. Yes?
So you talked about, not no one knows their career path, or, you don't exactly know where you're going to go. You don't know exactly where you're going to go in life, and then you were in audit for a year. What happened after that, and how did you, transition or move on to what you decided you wanted to do next?
So audit for a year taught me I didn't want to be an auditor, but it gave me some skills to help auditors with some particular problems that they had to deal with. We have this notion in the audit business, and those of you who are accounting majors know this, called specialist. You really can't have the person that knows pensions, the person that knows actuarial activity, the person that knows fraud, the person that knows valuation of complex securities. You can't have those people as a part of your audit team. So there's this notion of specialist. And what I became, in addition to doing consulting, was an audit specialist around a particular very mundane set of industry rules relating to aerospace and defense companies. Sounds like it would be boring, but what it really did was bring me closer to those companies, and I learned a lot more about those companies. So then as they go through ups and downs, I get new sets of skills. So they went through a phase where they were very acquisitive. And as a result, I learned M&A. as a result of understanding those types of companies and what they were doing. They went through a phase where they were very litigious because the M&A deals that they got involved in didn't work. So I went through a period of learning how to help somebody work their way through a dispute, a lawsuit, a mediation, an arbitration. They then went through a period of time where cost control became extremely important for them. So I learned how to do strategic cost management. And then they went through a full circle and came back and decided that strategy and growth was important, and back to acquisitions. And lo and behold, here's a set of skill sets that I already had. So it was just a complete circle. And again, it's almost like a relationship. You never know when that experience, that skill set's going to be helpful until you use it. But that was largely my path. And I sort of took an off-ramp when we started doing disputes, litigation, M&A, because those types of transactional things interested me. I liked the excitement. I liked the importance of the project. I liked the fact that the clients were making big bet the company decisions every day based on the stuff that we were doing, and that became where I specialized. Let me take this young lady in the back. I'm sorry. I feel bad.
Hi, I wanted to know, what does it feel like to be a CEO of such a large company, and how do you manage all your responsibilities in the most effective manner?
Oh. So I'll start with what it feels like. It's a huge honor. I mean, that is sort of what I think about every day. I have an absolutely fantastic job, and that is to help a really, really talented group of people navigate our way towards building a market-leading business, a market-leading franchise. It is as good of a job as I could ever imagine having. How do I manage it every day? It's wacky. You learn pretty quickly that there are only a certain number of things that you're going to get done. You learn how to prioritize. You learn how to manage time. You learn how to trust, which as a consultant is very difficult because you go from a doer to a manager of doers, and that's where many consultants spend the rest of their time. And then the next step, which is to buy into the fact that the managers of doers and the leaders of doers know what they're doing. And you sort of have to distance yourself from a lot of decisions that you would have jumped into right in the middle of. And that's the hardest part, at least for me. Time management is difficult. I would refer all of you to a quote from Emerson. It's called Finish Every Day and Be Done With It. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it before. Google it, read it. It is sort of how I live every day. Basically, I'm not going to quote it, but basically it says, once you're done with the day, you're done. Lots of good stuff happened. Lots of dumb stuff happened. Forget it. Tomorrow's a new day. And that sort of has to be the way you work. If I could, I want to take 1 minute and ask my colleague, Stephen Ty, who served as an intern for us this summer. Stephen won a project, a contest that we had in the firm. I'll let him tell you what the contest was and what he won, and give you some thoughts on how much he enjoyed it. I'm giving it away a little bit, but.
Hello. So as some of you guys might know, Deloitte is a sponsor for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and so I had the honor of attending the U.S. gymnastics trials out in San Jose. And so the question that we were asked was, how can you make your mark on Deloitte? And so when we were at the trials, it was very inspiring to see all these athletes there. And so right afterwards, we went over and we got autographs. One of our athletes, Jonathan Horton, was sitting there, and we went up to him, and we said, you know, we're from Deloitte. And the first thing he did was he stood up, and he shook our hands, and he expressed his gratitude to us. And he said, you know, thank you guys so much. It really makes a difference, your sponsorship. And so that really changed my perspective on Deloitte and it really made me realize, how much Deloitte is involved with not just its clients, but the overall community. And they really put a lot into its people. And that's the one thing that I really got out of Deloitte. Everyone I met was very helpful, very caring. I came in, didn't know anything about what to expect on the first day, but we had buddies, we had counselors, and all the other interns that we could work with together, and it was an amazing experience, probably one of the best summers of my life.
Good. And so we're trying to, as I told you before, we're trying to keep him, and we'll continue to do so.
So can I ask you the last question?
Sure.
So what does the CEO of Deloitte FAS do to relax?
Oh, okay. So I have some interesting hobbies. I have a pretty eclectic, translated strange, music collection. I listen to just about everything. So you can hear, if you were to grab my iPod out of my bag right now, you would find every genre of music known to mankind on it, which makes me not the popular guy at a party, because you want to put an iPod on, mine never gets put on for a variety of reasons. I watch a lot of movies. I'm really a movie buff. I basically broke, for some unknown reason, we at Deloitte decided that we weren't going to use Facebook or Yammer, that we were going to build our own. And we did. And one of the first days it was out, I broke it. Because I posted a list of what I thought were the 20 best movies of all time and asked everybody to comment. And I think 7,000 responses later, they asked me to take it down because it was causing difficulty with the system. So I'm a big movie guy. I also practice yoga, Bikram yoga, in fact. Anybody in here know Bikram? 105 degrees, hour and a half, hot room, as little clothing as possible. Talking about perspective and mirrors, Bikram is the only personal time I get. You spend basically that entire hour and a half looking at yourself in a mirror. Try that. No matter how vain you are, try looking at yourself in a mirror for an hour and a half. Your brain opens up. Thank you.